Hello, everyone. We'll just wait for some people to filter in. We'll start in a second. Okay, everyone, I think we can begin. We'll still have some people filtering in. And that is fine. And we're going for them. Great. Hello, everyone. I'm Clayton Smith. I am chair of the Parks and Public Spaces Committee for Community Board 5. And we will hear and deliberate on a number of items tonight. As a reminder to everyone, no position is the official position of Community Board 5 until the time that the full board hears these matters. That is a week from Thursday night, and those meeting details are at cb5.org. We have a little bit of an unusual structured agenda tonight. We are hearing a few items ourselves as the Parks and Public Spaces Committee, and we will be joined by members of the Landmarks Committee who will filter in. And immediately after the Parks and Public Spaces agenda, we will convene the joint meeting of Landmarks and Parks and Public Spaces to hear one joint item, at which point this group will be adjourned and Landmarks will continue the rest of their committee agenda. So that is what's happening structurally this evening. And we have 4 presentational items, basically. And I'd love to begin with the Madison Square Park Conservancy. I am scanning who is in Stephanie is here. And Stephanie, I feel like there was someone else who was going to join you. Are we waiting for anyone? Oh, Jessica Kaplan, there you are. Thank you. Heads are very tiny. Okay. So welcome, Jessica and Stephanie. We'd love to hear your plans for the native plant giveaway.
Yes. Hi. Thank you, Clayton, for introducing me. I'd like to thank the committee for giving me the time to speak today on this initiative through Madison Square Park Conservancy. I'm just going to share my screen here. Okay, so as you all might remember, this summer was the Myelin Ghost Forest art display. It's on view until November 14th. What I hope you also noticed in concert with this display was we had native plantings all around our annual planting areas. So around the fountain and around the reflecting pool. We had all these great perennials and shrubs that were all kind of what you would see in the Pine Barrens region of New Jersey. So on the screen here, you can see a few examples. Basically what we'll be doing is a giveaway of all that material. So normally what would happen is we would have tropical annuals that fill these beds, but this year was very different in that we have all these great perennials and shrub material. So it would be really awful to get rid of it by composting. So we're going to open it up to the community and give everyone a chance to launch into our guide to restoring native plants in New York City by providing some great plant material. So this is where it'll be. Somewhere on the western gravel, the southern gravel, you'll see tents. We'll make ourselves known. That's pretty much it. If anybody has any questions, I'd be happy to take them, or you could always email me at the email on the screen.
Great, Jessica, short and sweet. Thank you so much for the information. It looks like a really great initiative. I'd love to see if members of the committee have any questions. If so, please raise your hands. And seeing none, I will ask if there are any members of the public in attendance who have any questions. If so, please raise your hand and you will be allowed to speak. Seeing none, you're very clear. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Yes, it's always lovely to see you guys. Thanks for coming.
Thank you.
Okay, great. Moving on, we have a presentation on the Fifth Avenue holiday installation and perhaps other plans. And who do we have in attendance to present this?
Hi, sorry about that. I just was having some technical difficulties. Give me one moment. Okay.
Hello.
Hello. Hi,
Hi.
everyone. My name is Yafi from Fifth Avenue Association. I'm the Streetscape and Operations Manager. And I am going to be just taking a few minutes of your time just to talk about the upcoming holidays plan that we have for the Avenue. Can you guys see it?
Yes.
Okay, great. So just to give a quick overview, Fifth Avenue Association is a business improvement district that runs from 46th to 61st Street on Fifth Avenue. And we provide sanitation, security, and other amenities for the district, and also happen to run their holidays plan. This is not specifically for what's in the exact store windows of individual stores, but more of something that brings the community together and shows a larger sense of coordination and efforts to bring joy and accessibility and activations to the street. So since 1993, the BID has been doing some of these installations in public spaces on the Avenue. This is Pulitzer Fountain right by the Plaza Hotel and the Apple Store. And this was the traditional display for many years. It was some variation of this. And a couple of years ago, we decided that we wanted to try to make this more engaging, more exciting, more modern, and more welcoming. So in 2019, we created these oversized ornaments and kind of made it more specific with different displays, different greenery. This was a first-year attempt at this. We also did some vacant window displays to try to brighten up the Avenue and make it feel a lot more exciting and engaging for people walking down the street. Next year, after that, we added to our display, adding more trees, more lights, more excitement. And we also built these large toys that, ooh, there we go. These large illuminated battery-powered toys that sat on the Avenue in the sidewalk. So they're very exciting. They were very well received, and we're excited to be bringing them back again this year. So for this year, we are doing what we're calling the fifth season, which is basically just celebrating exuberance and this feeling of abundance and plenty and magic. So we are going to be doing an upgraded Pulitzer Fountain display, bringing back the sidewalk toys from last year, also adding some trees, pole trees to the street, and also partnering with City Harvest to help them with donations and try to increase the love and the giving of the season. So this is a completely non-commercial endeavor, but it will be definitely scaling up and trying to bring more joy. So this is just a sketch of what we're hoping to do this year in the fountain. It's going to be really beautiful, really exciting. The story of Central Park zoo animals that have come to enjoy Fifth Avenue and come and play and be outdoors and just kind of be fun individuals. And there will be activations that people can come and there'll be Instagram stations for people to come and take pictures, and also an activation button that somebody can push to then have something special happen in the fountain. We're bringing back the toys, as I had mentioned, and these flagpole trees, which will be sitting on the sidewalks as well. And all of the toys will be accompanied by these cute little poems that just give a little nod to whimsy. And that is our plan. If you have any questions that are not addressed during this meeting, feel free to email me at Fifth Avenue, yafi@fifthavenue.nyc. But for now, that's all. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Yafi. I just have a quick follow-up question, which was your interesting and mysterious surprise feature in the fountain when you push a button. What occurs when you push the button?
So I didn't mean it to be that mysterious, but this is more of an illustrative sketch, but there will be a shower head above the bear, and the rain will start coming down. The shower will be coming down on him. A bunch of the elements in here will also be moving all the time. So you'll have penguins that are kind of going in and out of an ice sculpture. His arm will be moving up and down his back, scrubbing. And we'll have the leopard and this polar bear doing rotations and skating around the fountain. So it'll really be a lot more live feeling. It'll be exciting. It'll be warm. It'll be inviting, be captivating. And we're really, really excited to see how this is coming out soon.
That's very charming. Thank you so much. And also, just because when we use the word activation within our internal dialogues on the community board, I think we mean something that's a little bit different than what you were saying. But just to put a fine point on it, it is safe to assume, I think, that none of the activations that you're speaking about are branded with any kind of corporate sponsorship or the
Correct.
like.
Correct. No corporate sponsorship. All of this was just us doing this to try to support the community and help bring people back after a long 2 years. So no corporate sponsorship.
Great, thanks for clarifying that. All right, we'd love to see if any members of the committee have any questions for Yafi.
It's Miriam.
Hi, Miriam, go ahead.
Hello. Hi. Are those clear lucite? Yes. It's clear, right? Or is it painted, many colors, like how colorful all your other things that are shown?
So there is a lot going on in the fountain this year. I would say we have a decent amount of blues, and all the animals are themed white, but we do add some colors to help with details and help them be identified as what they are. For example, penguins will have the black backs, and there will be, I think our whole goal every year is to really do something bigger and better and greater, but also pay respects to the beautiful architecture and the natural beauty of the fountain. So this will not be overly colorful. It will be a toned down, more classic look.
They're not transparent, are they?
No, they're not transparent. They're solid. They're made out of foam.
Great, thanks.
And properly weighted and secure and safe and all of that. We've been through extensive amounts of testing and engineering to make sure that this is a safe display. But we're very excited to see how this comes out. And I hope you guys will come and visit and enjoy.
Thanks, Miriam. Any other questions for members of the committee? If so, just raise your hand. And seeing none, I will ask if there are any attendees, members of the public, who have any questions. You also can raise your hand. Charles, you may speak. Just unmute yourself, please. Oh. Okay, you can.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, hello.
Hi, thank you. I missed the email address that the lady gave. I was wondering if she could please spell out the first part of the email address, because I think it's her first name or surname. And I was wondering if it's possible, if when the holiday installation is up, would it be possible if someone could assist me with maybe a tour of them, as I live on my own and have sight loss, and I don't have anyone to assist me around that part of Fifth Avenue. If I got my Access-a-Ride somewhere to near that art installation, I was wondering if someone could maybe help me to enjoy the installation, if possible.
Thank you so much for reaching out and saying this. My email, I can spell it out for you. I put it back on the screen if that helps. It is YA, F as in Frank, I, S as in Sam, H, A, F as in Frank, E, R, S as in Sam, U, L, L, at Fifth Avenue spelled out .nyc. Also, if you would like to message me directly in this Zoom, I'm happy to send you an email so that you have my full email if that was too much of a mouthful. And definitely send me an email letting me know, just reminding me of this request, and we can see what we can do and work it out.
Did you get that, Charles?
Yes. Would that be Fifth Avenue, like as in the number 5, then TH, or Fifth as in spelled
out?
Okay. Thank you very much. And if I'm not able to message you in the chat, I'll reach out to someone at Community Board 5. Maybe they can pass my email over if they don't mind.
Yes, we'd be happy to facilitate that.
Thank you. Thank you. I'm very grateful. Thank you. Happy holidays. Thank you.
Happy holidays.
Any other questions from members of the committee before we move on? I don't. Thank you for the presentation and for your help, and we look forward to seeing this installation.
Sounds good. Thank you very much.
Have a nice night.
You too.
All right, moving right along, we have the Flatiron Bid in attendance happily to discuss their plans for the holidays as well. Kurt, hello, nice to have you back.
Hi, thanks everyone. Clayton, great to see you. I think I see Miriam and Mike as well. Hello, hello. And members of the committee, thank you for giving us a few minutes this evening to go over our plans for this this coming holiday season on the Flatiron Public Plazas. I'm gonna go ahead and share my screen if that's okay.
Yeah.
Great. And let me get to, all right, slideshow. Everyone can see that, is that okay?
Yes.
Great. It's hard to believe we are now in our 8th year of having the Flatiron Public Plaza Design Competition. We developed a competition in 2014 to develop a public art installation on the plazas during the holiday season as a visible landmark in the heart of the district, and to bring more people to Flatiron. I won't go year by year through the memory lane here, but we'll go back 1 year to last year. Last year's piece was called Point of Action, and it was by Studio Cookjohn. There were 6 frames on the North Plaza, 3 on the South. It was the first time that we had an activation on both the North and South Plaza. And by activation, I mean public art installation, not a corporate sponsored activation. And this piece here was just a beautiful piece. And was also the first time that the light itself was via rechargeable batteries, so we didn't have any spaghetti runs to the electric box in the plaza. The piece on the left was just an example of some of the great social media exposure that we got. And the photo to the right actually shows the founder of Studio Cookjohn, Nina Cookjohn, who was the lead designer and produced a fantastic piece. This year's piece started with an RFP in June. It was a closed call RFP that was led by Van Allen Institute, our longtime partners on the project, and the design experts that they leaned on to produce design firms for them to reach out to included Nina Cookjohn, Justin Garrett Moore, who is a program officer at the Mellon Foundation, as well as Ashley Mendelson, an architectural curator and educator. The RFP was released in late June, and 3 submissions were received by the August 1st deadline. In early August, partnership staff and Van Allen staff reviewed those designs and portfolios, and then the next day, myself, a couple others from our staff, as well as Van Allen's leadership, held interviews with 2 finalists. And this year's piece was awarded to Atelier Cho Thompson, a New Haven and San Francisco-based firm, for an installation called Interwoven. And Interwoven here is archways, a hammock, and benches that are constructed with steel framing, netting, resin panels, and high-density cork. The firm is very committed to sustainable design and carefully chosen materials, including the rapid renewable cork and the steel that is made from mostly recycled content. The piece here kind of gives you an overview of how it's constructed and what it's going to be. It's basically 3 sets of modules with arches with a steel frame with a hammock component to the southern third, a bench component in the middle third, and then an open frame on the northern end that'll have a fun story wall as well. There's another piece here that shows kind of the side angle looking from the west to the east. And the northern end, again, you see that the northern panel has pieces that you kind of see there. That will be a prompt that says, I dream of a world where we can, and then people will respond to that with written submissions, but only during activations. It will not be anytime you can plop a response to it. The middle archway there shows the bench feature. The bench is actually made of cork, as are the footings of the piece. And then the southern piece will show that hammock piece to the right. The bottom forms that show the feet there, so to speak, on the bottom of the piece. Most of those are what is called 3-form resin. It's a very hard, almost hockey puck-like resin material that you can sort of see through a little bit. And then the top will be polypropylene 1/4-inch netting that will be painted and installed to the sides as a cladding. So you'll actually see the structure from the inside, from the outside, but you can't actually climb on or touch that structure that forms the skeleton of the piece. Atelier Cho Thompson was co-founded by Christina and Ming, who you see there to the left. They're bi-coastal. Again, they're based in New Haven and San Francisco, and they were founded in 2014. And this year, the project team includes them, Atelier Cho Thompson, lead design, and Smart Department is currently fabricating and will install and deinstall the piece. They're based in Bushwick, so they are a New York City firm. And funding for the piece, first and foremost, comes from the Flatiron Partnership, but Atelier Cho Thompson has just knocked out of the park with their own fundraising for the piece, including grants from Poise, the Bounce Back Grant for women-owned businesses, and a $20,000 donation from Standard Asian Americans as part of the Asian Pacific Fund, and an anonymous donor also donated $10,000 to the piece. And a lot of in-kind sponsors have contributed as well. Engineering, lighting, and even the signage for the piece would be all donated. 3-form, the cladding on the sides and on the bottom of the piece, almost 6 figures worth of material was donated, so that's incredible. And I will read the artist statement about the piece. Interwoven celebrates the joys of intersecting with our community in public space. Inspired by the dynamic geometry of intersections that form the Flatiron Building's shape and America's woven tapestry of cultures, the installation is an unfolding set of interactive archways. We'll be opening the piece on November 22nd on the North Plaza. That's a Monday night, so please join us. Installation will probably begin as early as November the 18th, so it'll be a few days of installation itself. We'll have overnight security like we always do, and in addition to the launch event on the November 22nd, we will have some on-site programming along with some digital online programming for what we usually call the Flatiron 23 Days of Flatiron Cheer, which usually happens December 1st through the 23rd. Miriam and Mike will definitely reach out in regards to holiday themed and interaction or installation themed architectural tours. So with that, I will turn it over back to the committee.
Thank you so much, Kurt. Do we have any questions from members of the committee? Go ahead and raise your hand. Yes, Natalie, go ahead.
Great. Hi, Kurt. A question for you. Once the installation is complete, where do you plan to send it next? Because I know I have seen last year's installation in another location. I thought that was fantastic.
Yeah, Natalie, great question, and I'm glad you brought that up because I forgot to mention one of the things that the firm was successful in raising funds for was the relocation of the piece so it doesn't end up in a landfill, right? It'd be kind of silly to have this piece where you're all worried about the actual materials that end up, not with a second life. These will actually end up back in New Haven at a skate park as a permanent installation.
Cool, thank you so much. Mike, go ahead.
Hi, Kurt.
Hi,
could you talk about the lighting a little bit, please? How it's going to be lit at night?
Yeah, sure thing, Mike. Thanks. There will be LED lights on during the evening hours and still being finalized. So there will be like a light ambient, light color the whole time. One of the interesting features about this piece that's still being worked out is if two people stand on two markings on the near the installation itself, or go to it itself and just hover over these two markings that'll be on the plaza with non-slip decals, lights will go up on multiple kind of interacting multiple arches themselves.
Thank you. And Todd, go ahead.
Hi. So again, I applaud the bid for these holiday installations. Each year, it's great to see a new interesting thing to brighten up the holiday season. And, the major thing for me in seeing how these things have been awarded, and I assume how you've chosen the various winners, is how they can be used to frame the area and the sites and the cityscape for pictures and Instagram posts. I mean, to me, that's what I see people doing more than anything. So that's really great. I mean, I have my own collection of pictures and Instagram posts, so I applaud you for that. And I hope that as this program goes on, they can come up with creative imaginings of various installations that carry this forward. So again, kudos to you. My one question is, our neighborhood has been overrun, maybe that's too strong a word, by graffiti and damage to our public art, since the pandemic. In the month or so that it's going to be up, is this particular installation susceptible to that sort of thing? Can it be cleaned? And is anybody going to be keeping track of it to make sure it doesn't deteriorate?
Yeah, Todd, thank you for the kind words as always. I know you're a big supporter of our work as well as the annual installation. Yes, absolutely. The design firm has to submit a maintenance plan, which we will receive from them. We will also have overnight security throughout the installation. And we are in constant contact with each individual firm every year about maintaining the piece to its excellent level. It isn't going to be installed and forgotten. I will say too, Todd, tomorrow morning on the Flatiron South Plaza, the social block installation, which has been incredibly successful from a public engagement, public seating standpoint, that is actually being de-installed tomorrow morning on the South Plaza. Surprisingly, I was shocked. It was a submission from the Armory Show, as part of their new initiative called Armory Offsite, they did not include any kind of security or overnight eyeballs on that piece in their budget, and that has actually not gotten touched or tagged. And I think it's part of it is this ongoing respect for public art in the Flatiron Plazas. But that piece was just incredible and was not ever defaced or anything. So kudos to the team from the Armory Show for that piece. But that is being deinstalled tomorrow. But this piece will have overnight security, and we'll be having eyes and ears 24/7.
Great, thank you. Todd, I just muted you because of your ambient noise, but if you have anything further to say, you can unmute yourself again. And I guess you do not. Kurt, thank you so much. I want to see if there are any other members of the committee who have any questions. And while we wait to see any follow-up questions, I can ask members of the public in attendance if you have any questions for Kurt as well. If so, please raise your hand. Seeing none. Todd, your hand is still up, but I think that is vestigial.
No, I'm done. My questions have been answered.
Thanks, Todd.
Thanks,
all right,
Todd.
Kurt, thank you so much for the time. It's great to see you.
Thank you all.
Best of luck with it. We look forward to it.
Thanks.
All right, moving right along. The fourth agenda item for the Parks and Public Spaces Committee before we go into joint session is a little bit of an unusual one. We have Todd Fine here, and as well as I believe Jacob Morris from the Harlem Historical Society, to discuss the issue of a potential siting of an Elizabeth Jennings Graham monument in our district. But before I turn over to you guys for your brief presentation, I just want to set the framework and expectations for the committee and members of the public about what's happening here and why we're hearing this item. And I'm sure we'll hear about this in a little more detail from them, but basically in the past, there was discussion in some circles within city agencies around the siting of this proposed monument in Vanderbilt Plaza in front of One Vanderbilt. And these gentlemen are here to discuss why, if I understand correctly, why they believe that is not a good idea. And so what's a little bit funky about us hearing this is it's not an application, and we're actually going to be hearing why something wouldn't be cited in our district. The reason why we've kind of allowed this topic to be aired publicly at our district's meeting is because this process so far is not a public one, and therefore if you have any in CA, the agencies who would be relevant about this siting, we can issue our opinion to them that we have the authority and ability to hear this publicly with sufficient time to weigh in. So with that, I hope that was as clear as mud. I will turn it over to Todd and Jacob to discuss with us briefly why they're here.
Hi.
Oh, you just muted yourself, I think, by accident.
Tap to speak. Okay.
There you go.
Am I good now?
Yes.
Oh, good. Okay. My name is Jacob Morris. I am the director of the Harlem Historical Society and also the New York City Freedom Trail Foundation. And Elizabeth Jennings Graham has been a location on the New York City Freedom Trail, which is primarily concentrated in downtown Manhattan, which before the Civil War was really like New York City's Harlem. I still think back to when the African burial ground was discovered or rediscovered in the early 1990s when they excavated the federal office building downtown. And people were so surprised that there was an extensive, let's call it major, Black presence in early New York City or New Amsterdam. In regards to She Built New York, the goals She Built New York.
I have to go. I have to go. So I'll call you back.
What's the matter, Todd?
I'm back.
Oh, you're back? You okay? Yeah. Oh, you were talking. No, Jesus.
Hey, gentlemen, we just have a few minutes, so I'd love to get to the details.
Yeah, I apologize for that. So, you know, the goals of She Built New York to like redress this imbalance in representation in monuments in New York City by the inclusion of women of color. Absolutely very worthy. And Elizabeth Jennings Graham, who was responsible for the lawsuit that led to the desegregation, the incident that led to the lawsuit, that led to the desegregation of streetcars and public transportation in New York City 100 years before Rosa Parks, is incredibly historically significant. And our city should be proud of this, and she should be honored. The question is, where should she be honored? And this has arisen not just with Elizabeth Jennings Graham, but with the other great women who were also preliminarily announced as finalists to be honored by the She Built New York initiative. Billie Holiday in Queens at Queensborough Hall, Maritza Lyons in Uptown Manhattan. And there's problems, not with who's getting honored, but where they're getting honored and how the decision was made. And also, you know, that the two women who made the decision, the two people who made the decision, the arbitrary and I would say less than thoughtful decision about where to cite these monuments, that process was absolutely not transparent. And for example, your community board wasn't brought into the citing decision-making process in regards to Elizabeth Jennings Graham.
Mr. Morris, I just want to intervene briefly because there actually has been no decision formally made or announced. So as far as we are, you're correct that we certainly weren't consulted, and we're happy to weigh in on our, you know, any dissatisfaction with a process that wouldn't include transparency. Totally hear you. But this is not something that has been announced, nor are there current plans for it according to the city as of now. Just to put a fine point.
Can people see my screen, by the way?
Yes.
Yeah. Now,
you see there's a location for the monument.
Yes, proposed.
Right.
It says proposed.
Well, no, this is a response to the FOIL that we did. These are actual plans.
Yeah, we had to find these because they wouldn't disclose them.
I'm just putting a fine point on it that
okay. Understood. Yeah.
I want to share what you know, but there is no formal public knowledge that any decision has been made.
So, Mr. Smith, with you know, one thing we've been discovering throughout the city, unfortunately, with the Percent for Art process, and also is that they do a lot of things and only tell the community boards long after the fact. And it's really a problem with the public art programs, especially the Department of Cultural Affairs. And the fact that, you know, there was an announcement made 3 years ago, and we have a location that has never been provided to you that was declared 2 years ago. We have no real historical justification for it. To us says we can't be sure that you're saying. They may tell you we have no plans, but we don't know. For all we know, they may have already selected an artist. This has happened many times before. Many people may know there was a pink Gumby. They call it the pink sunbather in Long Island City that that was produced, and they did it without telling the community board. And they had to actually have, there was such an outrage in Long Island City that there was reform legislation passed against Percent for Art because they were consistently doing major art projects without disclosing people and selecting the artists without people even being aware. So I wouldn't be so sure. And the reason, when we did this FOIL to find out that there was a specific location, as you can see here, already determined, says to us that they are quite far along. And the reason that they are not moving forward is because there are these political issues, because it's actually disrespectful to Black history. It really is. This is a very specific part of Black history that is embedded in Lower Manhattan in an array of Black organization. And so this is a history that's been dispossessed. Blacks have been evicted from Lower Manhattan and all throughout the city. And they are putting it in a place that makes no sense to the experts on the subject, including Mr. Morris, but also all of the Black historians and experts that we've talked about. It's actually quite insulting that and that they can use this fact that it's not a formal proposal to then engineer something where they're going to just launch it. You know, they're going to show up one day and say, as you guys well know, we welcome, hello guys, here's our plan for the Elizabeth Jennings Graham, and it's all going to be done.
Right.
And you're going to have nothing, and we're going to be shocked, and we're going to have to fight it in the press. So I'm sorry to go on, but it would be so much more positive
in this item. So I would like to shore up our position so that we can help you. Is that okay?
Exactly. So that's why we just want to let you know that this might happen in a disastrous way, and we want to give you the information now.
We appreciate it, and we do not disagree that any public art installation or siting should have a transparent process, and we also do not disagree that DCA can be a particularly difficult agency to deal with in this regard. We do have a lot of history with DOT public art program and other ones coming to us publicly well in advance and having a public conversation around these public art installations. My opinion, and I would love to hear from members of my committee as well if anyone disagrees, is that we would be very happy to put into writing communication with DCA and anybody else who's relevant within the city and our elected officials, stating that we insist on a transparent process for deciding of any public art in our district. And that's true in general, but we'd be happy to put a fine point on it for this particular issue as well, if that will help bring attention to it and support this initiative. I don't think we disagree with anything about this, but that's pretty much, I think, the way we could be most supportive, because we're certainly not going to take like a formal position, against something. I think we would just want to be on the record asking for transparency in a timely manner.
As an example of a way.
Todd. Thank you. So I want to say thank you. I really appreciate you saying what you just said. That would be wonderful if your committee and the board called for more transparency. The fact of the matter is as you know, Jimmy Van Bramer is the chair of the Cultural Affairs Committee in City Council. He's term limited, and we've had extensive interactions with the committee and with his director of legislative affairs. And I had a conversation with his director of legislative affairs just a couple of days ago, and I said, what the legislation calls for is great, but there's no compliance mechanism built into the legislation in regards to transparency of process. If you go back, Todd, if you can go back to.
We just have 1 or 2 more minutes and we've got to convene our joint session. So we'd love to hear any further.
I'll wrap this up real quick. I just would like you guys to take specific note of 2 items on the PowerPoint. One, the picture of Rosa Parks in Montgomery, Alabama. I would like the members of the committee to note that they cited Rosa Parks approximately 30 feet from where she got on the bus, that she had that very negative interaction with that bus driver. So in other words, the citing decision was sensitive to the history of the moment that led to so much in civil rights history in this century. The same thing happened in New York City. And so we feel that Elizabeth Jennings Graham, her location should be where she got either on the streetcar or thrown off the streetcar. That led to the lawsuit that led to the desegregation 100 years before Rosa Parks. This is so monumental to be lauded and appreciated for a major contribution for New York City. Now, let me go to the.
No, I'm sorry.
Donovan,
We have to move. Our joint meeting. Our joint meeting is convening at 6:45. I would like to hear from members of the committee, though, if anyone has any.
Let me just say this about Donovan Richards. Donovan Richards explicitly came out very recently, and he said, and he wrote a letter, and there's the letter in our PowerPoint, which you can, of course, share with the members of the committee and the board.
We will.
He says that the Billie Holiday location that they picked, which was at Queensborough Hall, is inappropriate, and that Billie Holiday and a statue to her, as well as her superlative sisters, Ella Fitzgerald and Lena Horne, belong in Addersley Park, where they lived, where they contributed so much to entertainment and jazz history.
Yeah, and I'll end it too.
So that's a major precedent. And I just want to convey my appreciation to you for exactly what you said in regards to that. If this board would do a preliminary resolution regarding transparency and its importance, we would be.
We will be
so appreciative.
However, I've got to ask you guys to stop your presentation so that
I'll just say one sentence, just for
members of my committee.
I just wanted to add, Mr. Smith, I'll just add, I also thank you guys for listening to us and hearing this. I know the city hasn't wanted to talk about this for 3 years, but yes, the Donovan Richards showed that if you take an affirmative gesture to fight for proper representation of Black history before this goes along, you can make a change that everybody in the whole city and all the people who care about these things will appreciate. And I think your community board can do the same thing that Donovan Richards has done here. Thank you.
I'd love to hear from any members of my committee who have any clarification questions or comments, or if anyone disagrees with my proposal that we put this into writing for the DCA, which I think has a different acronym now, but you all know what I mean. Todd.
Okay, so I think if we're going to do this, the sooner the better. We know the way things work in this city. The site and placement of monuments and everything else often takes a backseat to all sorts of other considerations. So let's do it, and let's do it quickly. And they're absolutely right. It makes no sense to put a monument of this type wherever. It should be cited if we're thinking about the public interest and educating our broader public in a way that'll emphasize the importance of the monument.
Great, thank you, Todd. Thank you for the input. Yes, Samir, go ahead.
Just to clarify, what you're proposing is not to have a resolution about the specific citing, right? It's about, the resolution would be about the public process and the transparency. Is that correct?
Yes, we're not going to pass a resolution per se on this topic. We're going to put this into writing that we can send out much sooner, based on community board precedent and our public record to DCA and anybody else who's relevant, to state that, to state that the proposed citing is something that has never come before us, that we have not had an opportunity to weigh in procedurally in any manner on this topic, and that we insist on there being a public process and transparency for the citing of this monument.
Perfect, thank you.
Let's see. Yes, John.
Yes, I first of all, I hope.
John, you just went silent.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay. No, I'll just be quick. I agree with what my colleague said. But in the resolution, in addition to talking about transparency, I do feel it's important to say that the process should take into account and be respectful of the history, in terms of where it should be placed. I think that is important. If you look at the presidents of, if you look at the Rosa Parks one, and there are other ones I could cite to you. So if you could just, in addition to transparency and process, talk about the process being respectful of the history.
Yes, I believe that's in the spirit of what we're discussing and appropriate. Thanks, John.
Okay.
Any other questions or comments from members of the committee? Todd, your hand is up, but I think that you're done. If you're not, you can unmute yourself.
Yeah, I'm done. Turn me off.
Anyone else? And I'd love to see if there are any hands, members of the public who have anything they'd like to say on this topic. If so, please raise your hand. Yes, Charles, you can unmute yourself and speak.
Yes, transparency is always important, and I do hope that the African American community themselves can also weigh in on where monuments or statues to Black history should be placed in our wonderful city, and hopefully they'll also have a major input in these decisions too. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for the comment. And yes, Catherine Ellington, you can unmute yourself.
Thank you. I just wanted to say how pleased I am to hear the call for transparency. I thought this was a done deal already, and it doesn't seem like it is. So, anything you can do with transparency, and to, in particular, make sure that it's historically appropriate. It is historically appropriate that a lot of these monuments should be downtown. There are a number of African Americans of great prestige who held businesses and conduct abolitionist work downtown, and so this part of history is important to Manhattan, and it's an important part of understanding racial tension, racial healing. So I just wanted to say, if there's anything I can do to help, let me know.
Thank you so much. Thank you for the comment. Any other raised hands from members of the public? And any further comments or concerns from members of the committee? I am going to assume we are unanimous on this position, since this is not a formal resolution but written communication. We are not going to take a vote on this, but I believe that we can vote by acclamation. If everyone will just say aye and raise your hand, that would be great. And if anyone disagrees, speak now or forever hold your peace. Okay, great. I think those raised hands are in support. Thank you, everyone. Gentlemen, thank you for your time and your consideration to this important topic. And we'll be in touch from the board office with next steps.
Thank you guys so much.
Thank you, everyone. All right, that wraps up the agenda for the Parks and Public Spaces Committee. So we're doing a little dance here where I'm adjourning this committee meeting. And now I'm calling into session the joint meeting for Parks and Public Spaces and Landmarks. We have Leila Lagasico is on the call, chair of the Landmarks Committee. And what we are hearing tonight is the proposed restoration of the Central Park Kinderberg site and the Chess and Checkers house. And we have Lane from the Central Park Conservancy here. Leila, I'm wondering if you have any comments you'd like to make before we hear from Lane.
Not really. Thank you so much for for hosting a joint meeting, and let's proceed. We have a long night ahead of us, as once this joint item concludes, we will then move into the Landmarks Committee meeting of CB5. So let's rock and roll.
Great. Lane, take it away.
So hi, everybody. Good to see everybody. And I'm here tonight with my colleagues, Chris Nolan, who's the Chief Landscape Architect for the park, and Denise Kuvney, who is the Director of our Architecture Studio. And I'm going to turn it over to Chris to share his screen and take us through the presentation.
Good evening, everybody. Thank you for the opportunity to present the project. As was introduced, we're here to present a project which will restore the Kinderberg, which was the park's largest rustic structure and a kind of character-defining element of the children's district down on the south end of the park, create some accessibility improvements, and create a new public restroom. Let me take you through the work. This work actually builds on some other restoration work we have done in the children's district. Most recently, we have done some work at the dairy, which we presented to you, which actually creates accessibility improvements, allowing this area of the park to be accessible from Grand.
Chris, you're not sharing your screen yet.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm a little rusty here. Okay, sorry about that. Okay, let me go back. So this is the footprint of the historic Kinderberg, which was the park's largest rustic structure. As I said, I'll get into some of the existing conditions a little bit later. It actually builds. This is the site here, kind of Central Park South, Fifth Avenue, Grand Army Plaza. It builds on some accessibility work. We have just completed the dairy, which creates an accessible route coming from the southeast corner of the park up to the dairy, and then ultimately up to Chess and Checkers if this work is approved. And it brings back an important historic element, character defining for this area of the park. This is the accessibility. This is soon to be open to the public. The path is now open to the public. The restoration work at the dairy has now been completed and will be opening in the coming days. A beautiful restoration of the core and shell. Interior work has been done also, really spectacular. This is our site here, which is just to the west of the dairy. This is the access ramp to the dairy, the loggia, which was restored. And this is the site of the Kinderberg. This shape here is the actual historic footprint. Inside that was the Chess and Checkers house, built in the 1950s. I'll go through some of the history, and our project is to restore the rustic structure or recreate the rustic structure, store the existing Chess and Checkers building, and create accessibility to the site. So some history. As I mentioned, this is all part of an area of the park south of the 65th Street Transverse Road, which was referred to as the Children's District. Within the Children's District was what was referred to as the playground or the ball grounds, which was developed into Heckscher Playground and Heckscher Ball Fields. On the east side of the Center Drive, there was the Kinderberg, which is the park's largest rustic structure, the dairy, which was conceived to actually distribute milk from upstate New York to children, the Kinderberg itself, and then there was a small rustic structure, a very large rustic structure, the Kinderberg, and there was a small facility called the Children's Cottage, which was basically a public restroom to accommodate this particular cohort of park users. This is actually an interesting footprint. It was a historic swing set from the 19th century. Some historic imagery. As I mentioned, it was the largest rustic structure in the park, separated on a high point of the rock outcrop where that bluestone capped stone wall was built. And as you can see, it was a very elaborate structure, which is essentially conceived to provide a respite for small children and their caregivers from the kind of hustle and bustle of the activity in the park and kind of step away. Evolution of the site. This is in the 1930, an aerial view. You can see the dairy here. At this point, the Children's Cottage had been lost to time. This is the Kinderberg, and it lasted, we believe, until about the 1940s. Interesting, if you're a history buff, this is actually was filled in, and this is where Woolman Rink is today. The rustic structure was lost in the 1930s, and by the 1950s, the Parks Department had proposed the construction of a small brick pavilion referred to as the Chess and Checker Shelter. It was a unheated facility that opened up to the flat, to the plaza area out front with chess and checker tables. And you can get to see it's actually almost a scale model of built contemporaneously at the same time when the original wood carousel building was rebuilt as a brick structure. It's a similarly detailed structure and has remained intact since then. As you can see, it was out in the blaring sun, chess and checkers tables around it, and the footprint has been marked since the park's original construction. So the existing condition. The chess and checkers structure has remained the same essentially. We added heat to it in the 1980s, and in the 1980s we constructed mid-1980s. I think it was done in 1986. There was a dimensional lumber rustic pergola to create some sense of scale around the building itself. The trees were added sometime pre-19. We don't know exactly the date they were added, but they were added probably sometime in the 1970s. And the wooden concrete benches as they go all the way around. You can see this is what marked the original footprint. The condition of the pavement, the tree pits, and the actual pergola itself is in poor shape. All the pergola needs to be rebuilt, and we now have the opportunity to recreate it as the rustic structure as it historically was. The pavements will be replaced, the benches, chess and checker tables will remain. I'll take you through the proposal. The actual core and shell of the building we will restore in kind, cleaned and repointed. The doors and windows will be replaced in kind without the actual grading for the security grading. The interior space, we have used it as a kind of intermittent programming space since the mid-1980s, never being terribly successful. We operated as a visitor center. The primary purpose is to give out chess and checkers and board games, which people primarily play outdoors. It's an odd-shaped building. There's no public restrooms, and literally we hand out tour material for people to go out and use the park. Principally, one of the greatest questions they get there is where are the public restrooms, and there are no public restrooms in the area. Part of our proposal will use about 2/3 of the interior space to create much needed public restrooms in the area. The majority of the programming happens outside. We give out chess and checkers and other board games. It's used for informal use, as you see on the left. It's also used for non-checkers purpose, chess and checkers purposes. People come out, use the tables to sit and eat lunch and have discussions and meetings outdoors. And then we run a fairly robust programming during warm months where we set up tables and have a kind of curated chess tournaments outside. So our proposed improvements, it'll be a in-kind core and shell restoration. As I mentioned, the doors and windows will be replaced. The brick will be cleaned. The grading will not go back on the windows. The slate roof will be replaced in kind, and the pergola will be replaced in kind. Significant improvement in terms of public amenities in the area. The interior space, 2/3 of the interior space will be converted to public restrooms, much needed. There are no public restrooms in the dairy either. There'll be a men's and women's rooms, a gender neutral facility on the front side, necessary utility space to actually keep these restrooms clean. There's some mechanical space on the back side. And then the east side of the facility will be open to the public, and we'll run our programming out of there, where we'll give out the chess, checkers, and board games to the programming outside. So the primary gesture of the project, in addition to the public restrooms and the accessibility improvements, is to recreate the rustic structure. The footprint of the Kinderberg is well marked as it historically was. We have an 1866 rendering of what was. There was kind of a central covered section. For the most part, the existing slate roof is kind of referential to that, and our intent is to replace the dimensional lumber pergola with the rustic pergola around the outside, and of actually increasing the scale and mass of what's out there today significantly to create the kind of, you can get a sense of how elaborate the interior of the rustic element was. Benches all the way around. This is basically plan view. The existing trees will remain. We'll actually build the rustic structure around it, and push the rustic structure out, cantilever just over the edge as it was historically. Most importantly, kind of marking the scale of that, and as it relates to the rest of the park, kind of enveloping the structure itself. And get a sense of what that is in plan. There'll be actually an increase in the amount of benches that are there today, same amount of chess and checkers tables. The tables and the benches will relate to both the tables, but there'll also be an increase in benches around the perimeter, kind of looking out to the views from this high point in the park itself. And you get a sense of what our model is as we created that. Much of the decorative rustic work we do in the park, almost all of the decorative work outside of the structural work, is done by our highly qualified in-house rustic carpenter crew. In addition, we're also proposing needed accessibility improvements to make this site accessible and the public restrooms accessible. You get a sense of what it was historically, and our intent is to actually create a ramp which kind of modeled on what we did both at the dairy and what we have done successfully over at the Arsenal, coming in from 65th Street down to the zoo and the Arsenal area itself, starting at the point, same entrance point up to the Kinderberg and onto the plaza itself as an issue of kind of equity and access. Let me take you through what that is. So the accessible route will actually come in, get to the dairy today, come around here, the same entrance point to the space here, up kind of traversing the contours up to the Kinderberg itself. And then we have some elevations, perspectives that really show what it is. This is what it is today. There's about just under 14 feet elevation change. It's a very significant elevation change from the point here up to the top. Highly constrained by some trees in the area, and a distance from here to here. It's kind of a bit of a math problem. And this is what the rendering will be. Again, same entrance point. It goes up, parallel in the contours up and around to the entrance point here. And then from this view here. There's a series of retaining walls that are needed to actually support the ramp as it kind of steps down those contours along the slope, making the 13.5-foot elevation change. And this is what it is from this. There'll be handrails on both sides, which is required by the ramp. Handrails will be added as required to the staircase, the existing staircase up to the Kinderberg. There is a section where the drop is greater that requires a guard. It'll be a very transparent guard built onto the handrails with our wire mesh used around the playgrounds, as is the case along here, and a very dense planting to hide what it is. The walls will be concrete walls faced in smooth, kind of large pieces of bluestone to kind of just be like a modern element behind the plantings without being too heavy. And I just want to kind of end on an illustration of what we had done at the Arsenal. It's actually a project which has been enormously successful. There was some concern that this, would really kind of not lay into the landscape, but over time, as the planting blends in, it's actually one of the most heavily used entrances now. All the people who come to both the Arsenal and the Children's Zoo, both people with mobility devices, baby carriages, and anything can kind of get down that slope. And that is the whole proposal. I'll be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you so much. I'd just love to kick off questions with, can you give us some detail about the price tag for this and the funding and the timeline?
Sure. Lane, you want to handle it?
Yep. So the price tag is, it's a roughly $7 million construction project. And the funding is it's privately funded. We have it's actually the same donors who did the dairy restoration. So it's a sort of a continuation of that, and actually the same family foundation that funded the Belvedere restoration that we did a couple of years ago. The timing is that we are hoping to finish the public review process and go through landmarks in the Public Design Commission by the spring, and be in construction also a little bit later in the spring.
To begin next spring?
Next spring.
And then how long do you think it will take?
Our goal is to be done by the end of calendar year 2022. As we actually complete the design and figure out exactly how we're breaking up the project into contracts, we'll hone on in that a little bit more, but our goal has been to the end of the calendar year 2022.
About a 9-month construction process.
9 months. And then, thank you. And then so I assume the funding, since it's coming from all the same sources, that funding is already is tied up, it's secured.
Yep.
Yes.
And we always ask this, if there's any expectations from those donors for any kind of naming rights or opportunities of the like.
Not on this project.
And then one quick question I have is just the trees. Is there any impact on any of the trees that are there?
No, there is not. We went to our layout of the ramp was actually very specific to kind of mitigate the impact on the existing trees. And it's also a bit of a constraint to the topography, and the rustic pergola up top will use kind of foundation techniques to limit any impact on those trees at all.
Great, thank you.
Hmm.
Okay, great. So let's see what questions we have from members of the committee for the applicants. Layla, if there's anything you want to say to begin, or if not, we can just...
Not really. I have some comments that I will say for the comment period. Yeah, members of the Landmarks Committee, if you have any landmarks related questions, now is the time.
Yes, Suzanne, go ahead.
Hi, thank you. I'm thrilled about this. I'm in this area a lot. And so my question is twofold. One is, you said regarding the staircase, you're not repairing that at all. Is that correct? And if not, or how is it that you're going to integrate the stairs with this new ramp and wall so that it looks seamless?
Yeah, I'm sorry if I wasn't clear. The staircase actually will get rebuilt. The existing bluestone treads and the masonry shell, the masonry will be salvaged and reused, but there'll be a new concrete core stringer basically for that to be built.
Oh, okay, so it'll look seamless. And
yes.
Yes, so I'm familiar with that elevation, and I'm all over there with kids as well as dogs. And I'm just curious, why is it, and I'm sure there's a great reason, that there's no access from Center Drive?
There is an access from Center Drive up. Yeah, there is. It's actually very steep. We actually did a kind of a thorough evaluation of the opportunities to create the access from that side too. It's technically almost impossible to do without really cutting into the existing rock outcrop. And it's also disconnected from the dairy itself.
Yeah, but there's access. It's just not ADA accessible from that side. But there is an entrance on that side as well. That's just too steep.
Yeah,
and that won't change then.
That will remain.
That will remain. Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Suzanne. Karen Pedrazzi. You can speak.
Take everybody back.
You're muted, Karen.
Sorry, two questions for you. Love the proposal. Can you speak a little bit specifically about the handrail? It looked like a black, thin profile, sort of modern, where in other parts of the park, there's a more historic cast iron looking with just a little bit more detail. Did you consider the historic guardrail, handrail along the ramp versus the modern one? And then the second question is there any signage to the ramp location?
We so for the issues of the handrail, actually, if you can see the image, it'll be the same detail as this here. And the handrail you see throughout that's an older handrail detail. It's not historic. It's actually something we began to use in probably the late 1990s into the early 2000s. And the handrails were not original elements in the park. And in fact, when there were some light guardrails around kind of drops, and they were very, very simple pieces of metal. And we believe that this is kind of a more appropriate and not a historicist approach to it, just providing the kind of base requirements in a very simple, letting the historic details and the landscape actually be the precedent. And with regards to signage, we don't have any specific signage as it relates to this proposal. We have an ADA or accessibility map, which will be updated to communicate this. Our website actually indicates what it is. And then there will also be, I think, we probably will do some temporary signage, or kind of signage, operational signage, I should say, not temporary, between the 2 points, kind of direct people to the restroom.
Mm-hmm. Great. Follow-up question, Clayton?
Yeah.
So have you gone away from that what used to look like historic, even though it was introduced in the 90s? Is this the new standard for all handrails and guardrails, regardless if they're accessible or not? And you've gone away from that more decorative one?
In the landscape. I mean, I think the thing is we do have other places. If you actually the Arsenal, the Arsenal steps, if you notice, and that has a little bit more of an ornamental, but it's a more architectural space. So the idea is in the landscape to, to try to make it minimalist and not have something that's, sort of object oriented and architectural in the landscape.
Thank you.
Thanks, Karen. Yes, Barbara.
I just wanted to go back to the Chess and Checkers Pavilion. Perhaps I missed it. You could just talk a little bit about the doors. I mean, everything is going to be replaced, and if you could just explain a little bit more about what is going to be there when this is all done.
Sure. Denise.
Yeah, right.
So we, it will actually, the doors and windows will replaced as they are. The masonry will be cleaned. Basically, the difference will be that it won't have the actual wire, the security wire.
That's what I wanted to know.
Yeah. And we'll get a handle on the signage and the Windex bottle up there too.
And I assume that will there be an the doors will be ADA accessible, of course. Yes. Right. Okay. Thank you.
Thanks, Barbara. Other questions from members of either committee? Yes, Suzanne, go ahead.
Sorry. Two quick things. One is, can you speak to any increased lighting in the area, because it's pretty dark? And sorry if you've already mentioned that and I didn't hear it. And secondly, will you be selling any food or drinks? And if so, will you be creating more of an opportunity for sanitation?
Yeah, there will be no food concession or drink concession up there. The dairy is actually our primary kind of retail gift shop in the park, and all the retail operations will happen there. This is purely public programming. With regards to lighting, I actually did not discuss lighting. The lighting on the paths will be bee poles as they are today. And we are actually working on a lighting scheme for the pergola itself, which will be essentially nondescript or non-visible lights that'll be in the rustic structure itself with downlight.
Okay, well, very exciting. Thank you. I'm so excited about that.
Thank you, Suzanne. Any other questions for members of either committee? And seeing none as of now, before we move into business session, I do want to see if there are members of the public in attendance who have any questions toward the application. If so, please raise your hand. And so I believe we can now move into business session. I want to thank you both so much for the information.
Sure, thank you.
And members of the committees, if you would like to raise comments.
I'll jump in, Clayton, without raising my hand. I think it's a very good proposal. That's why we love the Central Park Conservancy. It's very well thought out. I'm amazed to learn that they have a in-house woodworker. I find that just so, it really rejoices me. The one thing that I would like to emphasize is that sometimes donors do the right thing and they're not asking for naming rights. And I want to applaud these donors, and I want to convey this message to them. And I want to ask the Central Park Conservancy to extend our gratitude for doing the right thing, for being generous. This is wonderful. We wouldn't be able to do these improvements without these very generous contributions, and doing it in such an elegant way, and we applaud them for that.
Thank you, Leila. Any other comments from members of the committees? I will just lend my voice of support as well. I think it's a very exciting project, and the accessibility, I think, is going to be wonderful. Yes, Barbara, go ahead.
Yeah, I just wanted to add that I think it really will improve this whole area. And not only that, but I think that 14 feet for an elevation change for a ramp is really hard. So I really commend them for working that into the landscape as they have, and also having bathrooms in that area. I think really is a tremendous amenity to the people who use that part of the park.
Thank you, Barbara. I know it's kind of amazing that everyone didn't like unmute and scream with joy the second you said that. Yes, Todd, go ahead.
Yeah, I was just going to say that thank heavens for the bathrooms. I think that that is the best possible use of that structure. It's too bad they got to give up the space for the information materials, but I mean, having bathrooms there, public bathrooms that are attractively housed in a central location is just a godsend. And again, I add my voice to Layla's, the idea that we have public funding and not naming, I think is a breath of fresh air. My only comment is I just hope that the Central Park Conservancy can staff and maintain those bathrooms so that people feel that they're safe and clean and something that everybody feels comfortable with. But kudos to the Conservancy.
Thank you, Todd. Yes, Dave, go ahead.
Yeah, just to clear up for Todd, I believe there is a small space set aside for materials and park materials, right? Yes. And I also, as someone like so many of us in CB5, we're in Central Park every day, and I just love this. And if only the rest of the city worked as well as the Conservancy did, we'd be really someplace. So thank you so much.
Thank you,
Thank
Dave.
you.
Thank you.
All right, wonderful. That's all the raised hands. So I think it is fair to assume that we are going to hear a motion for approving this application.
Motion to approve.
Great, and a second. Thank you very much. Barbara, off the top of my head, I see you and Mike, I think, are on both committees. Would the two of you be comfortable pass the resolution?
Yeah, absolutely.
Great, thanks. Oh wait, John also. We have 3 overlaps. So the 3
The more
of you.
the merrier. I'll take a first stab at it. So
great, thank you so much, Barbara. All right, Craig, I think you are prepared to do the vote tally for both committees. And those of you on both committees, you remember you will only be voting once in this roster.
Okay. Layla.
Yes.
Clayton.
Yes.
Craig is a yes. David.
Yes.
Buzz.
Yes.
Miriam.
Yes.
Natalie.
Yes.
Aaron.
Yes.
Laura.
Yes.
John.
Yes.
Mark.
Yes.
Will.
Yes.
Suzanne.
Yes.
Mike.
Yeah.
Kathy.
Yes.
Samir.
Yes.
Megan.
Yes.
Maki.
Yes.
Richard.
Yes.
Kim.
Yes.
Chuck.
Yes.
Karen.
Yes.
Todd.
Yes.
Barbara.
yes.
Noah.
Yes.
Tony.
Yes.
Passes unanimously.
Great, thank you so much. Thank you, everyone. And Lane and Chris, thank you so much for your time and the thoughtful presentation. We look really forward to it.
Thank you.
Awesome.
Thanks, everybody. Bye.
That concludes the joint agenda. So we will adjourn the joint meeting and I will hand it over to Layla, who will convene the 3rd committee meeting of the evening.
Thank you so much, Clayton, and thank you to the Landmarks Committee members. Please stay on as we are now entering into the Landmarks Committee meeting of Manhattan Community Board 5. My name is Layla Logizico, I'm the chair. A few words about how the meeting is going to run tonight. We have 2 applications. We will hear a presentation by the applicant for each one of these applications, full and uninterrupted presentation. Once this presentation concludes, members of the committee will have an opportunity to ask questions. After that, I will open up the floor to members of the public who will have an opportunity to ask questions and make comments to the application. The applicant will be given the opportunity to address those questions and comments. Then we will move to business session. During business session, only members of the committee are allowed to discuss the matter unless recognized by the chair. So during business session, members of the committee will make comments, and then we will reach a decision on how to weigh in on this proposal. A motion will be made, and this motion will be taken to a vote by the committee. This vote by the committee will then be presented to the full board of Committee Board 5, which meets on Thursday, November 10 at 6 p.m. And the vote of the full board becomes the official position of the board. This recommendation will then be forwarded to the Landmarks Preservation Commission, as well as any other relevant entities or stakeholders or elected officials. As I said, we have 2 items tonight on the agenda. And we are starting tonight with an application at 860 Broadway. This is an application for a certificate of appropriateness for rooftop terrace and bulkhead addition. I think we have the team of applicants with us. And
Yes,
if you want to introduce yourselves, share your screen, and we are
Sure.
ready to hear your presentation. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Leila. Good evening to the Landmarks Committee. My name is Robert Bianco with PKSB Architects. I'm joined also by Fernando Chavez with PKSB Architects. We're here tonight to present our application for a certificate of appropriateness for a rooftop terrace at 860 Broadway. And I'll share my screen now. Okay. 860 Broadway is located in the Ladies Mile Historic District, and we are the one building in the Ladies Mile Historic District that fronts onto Union Square Park. So a bit of an overlap tonight with the Parks Committee. If anyone stuck around from the Parks Committee, I thought this was a nice opportunity to discuss an application for outdoor recreation space on a building that overlooks a public park. The building was constructed in 1884 by French-American architect Detlef Leonau. And you can see in the 1940 and 1980 tax photo, the building remains largely unchanged today since a major facade replacement in 1925. However, we were recently involved with some building infrastructure upgrades that occurred a few years ago that included elevator modernization, a new elevator that meets current code for ADA accessibility and stretcher compliance, and an expanded main building lobby. The building is accessed from Broadway. This is the main building entrance. Some existing conditions photos of the current rooftop. The photo in the center is the main stair and elevator bulkhead. This is the main core of the building, and this portion of the bulkhead was recently expanded to accommodate that new stretcher compliant, fully ADA compliant elevator. To the left-hand side is the existing stair bulkhead, egress stair bulkhead, and also seen from the north lot line. This is the facade facing north into the Ladies Mile district. And the bottom row of photos are mostly showing the condition on the north side of the building, which is closer to 18th Street. The building also fronts onto 18th Street. A little bit easier to understand in this bird's eye view of the existing condition. The main stair and elevator bulkhead is located along the north lot line wall. The new stretcher compliant elevator is located at the southwest corner, closest to the main building entrance at Broadway. Toward the center of the building, the rooftop is pretty empty and open space, other than 3 existing skylights at the center line of the building, and some existing mechanical equipment on dunnage, which it will be removed, replaced, and relocated to the north side of the building. The north portion of the roof houses some mechanical equipment, 2 large wooden water tanks, an existing sprinkler tank bulkhead, and all that will remain. And this is the proposed condition. We are proposing a new rooftop terrace on a new raised platform that will be elevated above the existing roof. The existing office tenants, all of the occupants of the building will remain in place during construction, which is the reasoning for building a platform above the existing roof so that that waterproofing envelope can remain intact while this is being constructed. The new stretcher compliant elevator will be extended to the roof level and a new vestibule will be provided for weather protection for that elevator. To the east, sorry, excuse me, orienting myself. To the east of the stair bulkhead, we are expanding the bulkhead to accommodate 2 single-use, single-occupant toilets for the rooftop occupants. All of that mechanical equipment that you saw in the previous slide will be relocated to the north portion of the roof. At the eastern portion, we're proposing 3 trellis pergola type structures to provide sun shading from the sun and some smaller gathering spaces for breakout spaces for meetings and small conferences. Existing floor plan of the existing roof condition. Currently, only 1 egress stair extends to the roof, and that's in this location right by the 2 elevator bulkheads. We're proposing to extend the elevator to the, the stair to the north, extending that up to the roof to provide a second means of egress for the rooftop occupants. An additional bulkhead that would be for dedicated use for the top floor tenant. At the northern portion of the northern extremity of the rooftop terrace, we're proposing a acoustical barrier to mitigate noise between the existing and relocated mechanical equipment and the newly proposed rooftop terrace. Again, the stretcher compliant elevator will be extended to the roof and provided with a weather protection vestibule, and new single occupant toilets and an outdoor kitchen area will be provided, basically stacking with where the plumbing occurs on the floors below. These are existing Broadway elevations and existing East 17th Street elevation. You can see the existing bulkheads beyond and water tanks beyond. And we are proposing to extend, raise, and expand the existing bulkheads, providing open pergolas to the east side and a new glass railing behind the existing parapet. And at the western lot line elevation, this is facing Broadway, existing condition. And our proposed condition, raised elevator bulkhead. This is the little vestibule for the new elevator. At the inner court facade, this is the portion of the roof that slopes down the most. So the existing roof below the raised terrace is about 5 feet below the terrace level. So we are proposing a metal panel fascia to cover that open gap, and again, a glass railing behind that. And this is the existing east facade facing east toward Park Avenue. In this location, we are proposing to extend to raise the existing brick parapet in the areas where it steps down so that the new terrace platform can frame into the existing bearing wall. And again, a glass railing behind that. The 3 open pergolas can be seen beyond, and raised bulkheads beyond. And an existing roof section at the top, proposed section at the bottom. Here you can see that kind of dramatic slope of the existing roof that I was referring to previously. And then some shorter sections, one through the Broadway facade, showing the extension of the elevator to the roof, and then through that center portion where we're proposing a metal panel fascia that would face onto the Broadway, that would be visible from Broadway over the adjacent buildings. And then some details for the different edge conditions. On the left-hand side of the page, this is the parapet condition at 17th Street and Broadway. We're proposing a glass railing that would be anchored to the new terrace platform behind the glass, behind the existing parapet. The center detail is at the western lot line, and the right-hand side of the page is at the eastern lot line. And we constructed mock-ups to confirm heights and visibility from throughout the neighborhood. At the top of the page, you can see the extended elevator bulkhead, elevator vestibule. There will be a small, this sloped portion represents a metal railing for an access stair to access the overhead equipment for the extended elevator. In the center of the page, the bright pink tape line represents the top of the new glass railing. Another view from the north looking south of the expanded bulkheads. And these bottom images, I just want to clarify that the mock-up was constructed to identify the highest point of the trellises or pergolas, but the netting is a little misleading because it's just deeper than what the actual structure will be. So I've highlighted in a red dashed line to clarify that this will be an open structure with a flat roof, and the sides will all be open. So taking a look around the neighborhood, the shaded gray area is indicating the actual Ladies Mile district. Beyond that is outside the historic district. And looking at visibility from directly across the street, only the elevator bulkhead expansion is visible from directly across the street on Broadway. However, more of the bulkhead expansions become more visible the further you get away from the building. So starting at 17th Street and Broadway, this is standing between Broadway and Fifth Avenue, looking east. We can the existing condition on the left-hand side of the page, proposed rendering on the right. We can see the expanded bulkhead, elevator bulkhead and vestibule. And beyond the adjacent buildings, you can see the extended or elevated roof terrace platform and metal fascia and glass railing. And this is a photograph of the mock-up that was constructed to confirm that extent of visibility. And then as you step further west away from the building, the structures to the north start to disappear, and by the time you get to Fifth Avenue, the elevator bulkheads are obscured. And then moving to the east side, this is standing within Union Square, looking back up at the looking to the north, back at the building. Existing condition at the top, proposed extension of that brick parapet to allow for the framing of the new roof platform, and then a photograph of the mock-up, a little bit more visibility of the pergolas than we had anticipated, but still minimally visible. And then the further you get away, again, you do start to see more of these rooftop accretions, you start to see a little bit of the elevator bulkhead, but that is also in the context of adjacent buildings, bulkheads, and various rooftop accretions on different landmark buildings fronting onto Union Square. And then moving it to the north as we're moving into the Ladies Mile district. This is standing at 18th Street looking south, existing photograph on the top, and then proposed rendering at the bottom. The bulkheads are visible in this scenario, but they are seen in the context of secondary facades, not seen at all in the context of the building's primary facades. And the mock-up construction confirms what we had anticipated. Moving further up north, again, the northern bulkheads start to disappear. That main elevator bulkhead is still quite prominent. And the mock-up construction. And then by the time you get to 20th Street, the elevator bulkhead visibility starts to fade away. So it's still visible at 20th and Broadway, but anything north of that starts to really recede. And then moving to the south, looking north. Now this is looking at the primary facades of the building. The bulkhead in the bottom image, you can see that the bulkhead is visible, but here from the south it is visible in the context of other buildings in the background, and it's not seen against the sky. We are proposing, should also mention materials, we're proposing a light colored stucco for the bulkhead structures to kind of reference the buff color of the main facade's brick, and also to just allow those bulkheads to sort of recede into the background, maintain the prominence of that very strong expression of the existing scalloped parapet. And the mock-up construction confirming the visibility of the elevator bulkhead extension, bathroom bulkhead extension, and a little bit of the trellis proposed pergola. And that visibility remains all the way down to probably 10th Street, but the further you get from the building, it really becomes so far away, still visible, but really far in the distance and in the context of a lot of other bulkheads and structures beyond. And then we did also confirm visibility from the 18th Street side. There is practically no visibility of any of the structures we're proposing from 18th Street. There is a little bit of visibility looking over the one-story building to the east of the railing. And that's about all that can be seen from that vantage point. And then I wanted to just end on the aerial view, just giving kind of an overview of the project, and happy to answer any questions anyone has.
Great, thank you. Just for clarification, can you actually put the map with the points of visibility that you studied?
Yeah.
So, okay, thank you so much. So you did not do any visibility study from within Union Square around 16 and 15 streets?
We don't have those rendered views here. We were kind of trying to capture the full extent, like the most extreme views. There is visibility. But we do have photographs of
this area is heavily used by pedestrians, obviously, and you know, the building is very prominent onto Union Square. I think it would be helpful to understand the impact, especially as we're talking about the primary facade. But let's jump to questions from members of the committee. You can use the raise hand function to indicate that you have a question, members of the committee. Any questions from members of the committee? Tony, go ahead.
Thanks, Layla. My first question is, talk to me a little bit about lighting. This is obviously going to be a space that's going to be used for entertaining. I imagine certainly like times a year like this one, we're going to have the space being used. Are the pergolas being uplit or any sort of lighting at all? Is the bulkhead having uplighting on it?
The bulkhead will not have uplighting on it. We are contemplating uplighting within the landscaping, yes, but the details of that are not fully worked out.
Okay, how close would the lighting be to the glass railing?
We haven't developed that detail yet.
Okay, and Layla, just one more question too. Can you tell us a little bit about the materials that you're using? You talked about the stucco for the bulkheading additions. The pergolas themselves, are they wood? Are they metal?
Pergolas will be a mix of metal and wood, yes.
Okay, are they a pergola like I'm thinking of? Do they have a canvas topping to them at
No.
all? Or are they open?
No, they have a solid roof. They're not fully open to the elements. They would have a solid roof, but they'd be constructed of, the roofs would be wood, the frame itself would be metal.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Barbara, go ahead.
Was the height of the bulkhead, is this the minimum? I mean, you can't make it any smaller?
It really is the minimum. It's a factor of these elevators have their machinery in the cellar actually.
So this is the overrun.
So this is just the overrun, and even with that, it's quite a bit taller than the existing roof since we're trying to extend that that access to the roof level itself.
And could you just talk a little bit? You mentioned that there's going to be a kitchen up on the roof. Could you explain how the landlord or you envision how this is all going to be used? I mean, this is not a restaurant.
No, absolutely not. No, it's for use for the building's occupants, and that the kitchen area is located in the center, kind of for use for the occupants to the north or to the south to share, and that location of the kitchen and the bathrooms is really just determined by the location of the plumbing stacks below. How it's going to be used, it's really just for maximum flexibility, used for whatever, not large events, but whatever in-house events that one of the office tenants might plan for, small gatherings, or just office breakout space, an office lunch or something like that.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Next up is Maki. Go ahead.
Thank you, Layla. I just have a few questions. Both of them are safety related, both for the tenants as well as the structure itself. The first question was regarding the railing that you had mentioned. I believe you said it was glass. If you can share with us the height of that railing. And the reason for that question is both for safety of the users of that space, potentially, and also because the street underneath in front of the landmark building is a one-way street with a lot of bike and pedestrian traffic. You've probably been familiar with some of the accidents that have happened there, and just for safety in case there might be a fire, per se, for the kitchen space, a little bit concerned about the structure itself, not to mention concern for the people nearby.
Is the concern for fire safety related to the railing height question? Or,
No,
or is it a different?
sorry,
it's a
two different parts. The
Okay,
railing
okay.
height is really just a
Okay.
question of, because there's pedestrians underneath, obviously you don't want things that are going to be flying over said railing, potentially impacting pedestrians in front of a historic building.
Right,
to be appreciated for its history as shopping and retail.
Right, right. We're showing the railing as 3'6" above the terrace, and I know that's the minimum code requirement. We understand the safety concern. We also are setting the railing back from the existing parapet, so it's not going to be right at the edge. It's held back a little bit, so there is quite a bit of a gap between the proposed railing and there's quite a gap between the existing parapet and the proposed railing. So I understand the height concern about 42 inches being a little too low. We're trying to address all sorts of issues, visibility from the street and safety. And then to address your concern about just fire safety, that we looked closely at the rooftop occupant load, where I think stating an occupancy of 64 persons, which is below the public assembly. This would not be a place of assembly. It would be able to accommodate up to 60, 64, 66 people, I forget. But we are providing the extension of the second egress stair to accommodate those additional occupants.
Thank you.
Thank you. Next up is Karen.
Hi, if you can reference the roof plan. My question is about, did you do any studies that pulled the pergola structure in more centrally located so it would be less visible from the public right away, leaving the open space area more on the perimeter? I didn't know if that would yield something less visible or not. And then I have a question following that one.
Locating it more in the center, kind of where my cursor is right now.
Yes.
Yeah, because of the strange geometry of the building, you can sort of see that would start to become quite a narrow space, and not terribly usable. The proportions of these more rectangular gathering spaces at the side are, I think, better for the office tenants' uses for meetings or conferences or just outdoor team lunches or something like that. And we wanted to kind of leave this main area just open and simple, and just not. The closer you get to the center, the more crowded you get into those existing bulkhead access and elevator vestibule. There are a lot of clearances that we need to maintain around those access points.
Okay. Second question, if you can reference, I think it was drawing 14, 15, and 17, the ones that show the visibility from some of the side streets. And the question is the color of the material selection. I think you said it was a light colored stucco for the bulkhead additions. That matches the primary buff brick, but at the photograph, sorry, not the drawings.
Yeah. Sorry, it's my file is just a little slow.
I think so. Well, I'll keep talking while you're flipping. The question is in the nature of the color, selecting the buff versus a reddish brick, because while the primary facade is buff, the secondary facades, maybe try another one. Like the buff color really jumps out to me compared to the red background, like the red brick
from the north
facades where buff is on the primary, but like that buff really pops out to me. And I wondered, how I don't know, I'm just kind of debating with whether red brick would go away a little bit better than seeing a big buff brick on top of the red facade.
Right. Yeah, it's an interesting point because we did look at it several different ways, and I think we ultimately landed on maintaining the stucco because we looked to the existing bulkhead on the northwestern portion of the building that does have that very strong line of the brick and then the bulkhead addition above. So we thought that that would be consistent with the language of what exists on the building today. But this is a point that's debated a lot at LPC. Some of the commissioners and some of the staff there like to maintain the memory of what you see here of the existing or original brick lot line wall and treat any additions differently, just so that the memory of what existed previously is preserved. But others might say, well, it's a brick bulkhead now. Why not extend the brick to that lot line wall? So to answer your question, yes, we have looked at different ways to approach it based on discussions with LPC. We felt that this was the most appropriate way to treat those facades.
Okay, thank you. We need to move on and pick up the pace. Suzanne, you have your hand up. Go ahead.
Hi, thank you for the presentations, very thorough. I wondered, as you were answering Karen's question, and you looked at this many different ways, did you have any plan that was more modified? It seems as though you guys are accomplishing a lot in terms of egress and hospitality and bathrooms. Is there any other scaled program that you looked at or plan that didn't add so much to the roof and there's so much visibility? Or was that ever discussed? Is there a sort of a plan too that's a little bit more modified? I'm just curious.
Just a more reduced? No, not really. Just for, I think the owners want to make this as flexible as possible moving forward. So claiming as much space on the roof as we possibly can, so that they're thinking of potentially allowing different tenants on different floors to have exclusive use of certain parts of this rooftop that's not fully worked out yet. So yeah, I think, no, we did not look at a scaled back version.
Thank you.
Thank you. I actually have a question. You guys came, or this particular building came to us in 2013 with a rooftop proposal, which we denied for issues of visibility. Can you actually speak to that?
Yes, I absolutely can. I was there. I was involved in that proposal. That rooftop addition was for a 2-story, highly visible rooftop addition for residential use. And this building is a kind of a complicated zoning lot. It straddles 2 zoning districts, a manufacturing and a commercial district. So it is pretty close to being at the limit for commercial floor area. There is some additional residential floor area, and that's what that application was for. And yes, we did come to you about 6-7 years ago. We did ultimately get an approval at LPC, but that work, the owners decided not to move forward with that work, largely because they realized that a 2-story addition of that scale would be logistically difficult, would require a lot of the tenants to have to move out. And they decided that they didn't want to do that. And they wanted to maintain their tenants, and they took a few years to think about it and decided that providing an open space, recreation space, office space has changed a lot due to the pandemic, and they thought that this would be a much more valuable and worthwhile intervention to provide for their tenants.
Okay. Thank you. Karen, I see that your hand is up. Is it a remnant from the previous question, or do you have another question?
No more questions.
Okay, thank you. Any more questions from members of the committee? Okay, seeing none, I will open up the floor to members of the public. Do we have any questions from members of the public? I see that Charlotte Willer has her hand up. You are allowed to speak, and you can unmute yourself, and you can introduce yourself and ask your question or make your comment.
Is the camera on? Hello, can you hear us?
Yes.
Okay, hi, I don't know why our camera is not on. Can you turn there's two of us here. There's Charlotte Willer and my name is Victoria Ashley. We're trying to turn the camera on so you can actually see us. But I'll go ahead and speak since time I know is of the essence. We are tenants of 874 Broadway, and I'm on the 7th floor, Charlotte's on the 8th floor. We look directly across at what is being built right now, and it is very concerning to us because it is very much an eyesore from this vantage point. It impedes our view. The reason that both Charlotte and I have moved in here in our respective apartments 13 years ago is because it's a gorgeous landmark building with an unobstructed view in an area that is not zoned for additional building. And, you know, this is really the beauty of this building and of this neighborhood. And to look at our window and all of a sudden see the structure, which is it clearly impedes the view. It stands out like a sore thumb because it's an unusual height that's disproportionate from the level of the roof. And it's open right now. It's just wood, pieces of wood, as you had said, to give a rendering of it. But when it's filled in, it will absolutely interfere with our light. Hearing the proposed recommendation for the terrace with the guest, 160 people on the roof, that is also disconcerting to hear that noise at any given time, hour, and cooking, etc. I'm on the board of this building, and we love our building here, all of the tenants, and we were thrilled that the decision in 2013 was upheld not to interfere with the building of 2 floors. Right across the street from us, which would certainly interfere with our beloved views. But seeing this, and we are happy to provide pictures. We have them. We can email them tonight if you like, for your consideration, just to see what it looks like from our vantage point. So we really implore you to keep the neighborhood intact as it was meant to be, and as we're enjoying it now. And we really implore you to turn down the proposal for this, because it would really be detrimental to all the residents in the building and would interfere with the beauty of the neighborhood.
Thank you.
Thank you.
As you mentioned that, I'm sorry, I just want to address one point.
Sure.
As you mentioned that you are in the company of another resident of the building, does he or she wishes to speak? And I would allow the 2 of you to speak, and then the applicant can address your comments and questions.
Okay, so I'll let Charlotte speak. It's not that she doesn't have a voice, but she just, rather than us talking over each other, so I'll let Charlotte go and speak as well.
Great, thank you.
Hi, I'm Charlotte Willer, and all my points, Victoria Ashley actually picked up on them, and I do think it's a worry to have. First of all, the bulkhead is really like a real problem, I think, and also I think the fact that there's going to be a kitchen, etc., etc. I mean, not only is it going to smell bad, even if they're out in the open air, because the wind carries it. It will carry it right over to our building, and the noise, everything. So, I mean, I honestly think it's really not a great project at all.
Thank you. I will turn it back to the applicant to address those comments, and then we have one more hand up from a member of the public. But I will let the applicant address these two comments that were made.
Sure, and I appreciate the comments and concerns, and we will look more closely into the views. Unfortunately, the Landmarks Commission reviews only views from public rights of way. So from streets or public parks, or anything elevated would be something like the High Line, something that's open to the public. So views from private property is not under their purview, but I totally understand the concern and the impact on the neighborhood and the occupancy of the building. I do want to clarify one detail that you mentioned. It's not 100. I didn't say 164 people. It's 64 people. So this is well under 75 occupants at the roof level. And it's really meant for use for the building's occupants. So there's no addition to the occupant load that already exists in this building. It's for recreational use for the office workers who spend most of their time in this building every day.
Thank you. I think we really need to move on.
Thank you.
Thank you. The next person to speak is Charles Person. You are permitted to talk, and you can unmute yourself.
Hello there. Hi. So I'm concerned about the glass railing along this roof deck. I'm worried about people gaining access to the parapet, or finding some way of going off the roof if they're drunk or if they're feeling suicidal. And I'm very concerned because I'm thinking about what has happened recently with the vessel. Not only has there been 3 incidents of suicide, but just recently a 14-year-old child decided to commit suicide off that vessel. So I'm just concerned with, if there was a member of the building who maybe they got fired, maybe they got let go, maybe they're going through some sort of personal crisis. If they were feeling suicidal, I feel that railing, is not really going to do much to stop them from jumping off the building. I have a roof deck in my building, and we have very tall fencing to prevent people from, going over the edge of the building. Is there any reason why such safety measures could not be implemented to try to prevent something like that happening?
No, I hear your concern 100%, and I share it. So we can certainly look at it at a higher railing. I think, frankly, we were looking at what the code requires and trying to reduce the visibility from the neighboring views. But I hear the concern, so I will take that back to ownership.
All right, thank you. Any more questions or comments from members of the public? Okay, so seeing none, we are going to move to business session. The first comment that I would like to make is that I am quite surprised that the primary facade views really within Union Square and along 15 and 16 streets is not demonstrated. And, if you look at the visibility and the impact to the primary facade, the first visual rendering is actually on 14th Street, which is, quite far away from the building. So, I make this comment. I want you guys to keep that in mind. It's leaving me with a little bit of an unsettled feeling. But I would like to hear from you guys. Comments. Barbara, you have your hand up. Go ahead.
Yeah, I'm just really concerned about the visual impact of the bulkhead in particular. I mean, I have other concerns about some of the other elements. It just feels very heavy and intrusive on the roof. You know, I know that in the presentation it was mentioned that there are, you know, lots of things on roofs, and that certainly is true in New York. But I just feel like this really it accentuates the visual impact. And it's not just the elevator bulkhead, but it's also the, you know, all the other elements that are being built in that are right up against the facade, the bathrooms. There's quite a lot of stuff going on in this roof. I mean, I'm a little less concerned with the visual impact of the pergolas, but the bulkhead you really can see. And I think I appreciate Karen's point about the color, but even in a different color, I don't think that will ameliorate the impact it will have on the surrounding area.
Yeah. Next comment is Suzanne. Suzanne, go ahead.
Yeah, so two things on that. One is I am also concerned about the visual impact. I'm concerned that we haven't seen perhaps a complete presentation on how it's going to impact the area, something that you have noted, Layla, and I agree with that. And I think that the directive to develop the roof, of course, I mean, to maximize the building and do it thoughtfully, but I'm just wondering if there isn't a way to try to modify this plan so that since it is a historic district, since it is a historic building, that they could try to accomplish some of the things by modifying this plan and honoring the building in the area, and that's and not making such a visual impact. That's what I'd like to say.
Yeah, thank you, Suzanne. Richard, you have your hand up. Go ahead, Richard.
Yeah, you know, I basically agree with the comments already made. Even without seeing what it looks like from within Union Square, just from the view vantage points that were taken, it seems very disruptive. And I think we've rejected applications that had significantly less impact than this, I think. So it just really seems stunning.
Yeah, thank you, Richard. Tony.
Thanks, Layla. You know, we're always struggling with, you know, making sure we're protecting the landmarks while also historic buildings and, of course, those building owners to move forward and attract tenants and stay viable. And we, of course, I think we can all agree that we want this building to succeed. For such a boutique building, this is a pretty intense roof plan with bathrooms, with these really big seating areas, with lighting, with kitchens, stuff like that. I think probably the biggest disadvantage for this building is its position. Fronting Union Square, of course, you have a real big visibility. Having that really amazing block of low-rise buildings just to the north of it along Broadway, it does make things much more visible. The elevator placement being closer to Broadway, closer to the street is unfortunate, but then trying to allow access to their tenants via elevator to the roof makes them have to increase that height so dramatically. I think from every position, it will be an eyesore, and that will really detract from the landmark itself. I am concerned about lighting as well. We didn't hear a lot of details about lighting because this space looks to be so big. I imagine there'd be a good amount of it. Having any kind of metals, having glass railings, I'm concerned about reflections, about, you know, pulling the eye upward during the evenings. I would also say, just because you did touch on the original application in 2013, that original application did have a restoration component to it for the retail spaces. And we would just like to say, if the owner is updating the building, having a beautiful restoration of those lower floors would certainly be a help as well. But as far as the application that's in front of us, I would have to say that it's really too much of a negative as far as the landmark itself is concerned.
Yeah, thank you, Tony. Buzz, go ahead.
Yes, I went out to the site today and photographed it and sent the photographs to Leila, especially at the corners of 15th Street and the Park and 16th Street and the Park. It is because of the park is open. There's no way to hide anything on the roof. And as Tony made, the point he made, from north of there, from 18th and 19th Street, the buildings are all low rise. So someone previously said, perhaps it could be redesigned. I think there has to be a realization that no redesign, I think, can significantly mitigate the issue if the issue is change, a visible change to the neighborhood.
Yeah, thank you, Buzz. Okay, it looks like we don't favor this proposal. It looks like the comments are unanimously on the negative tone. Is it fair to say that we're leaning towards a denial because the visibility is too extreme and too distracting from the landmark building and the landmark district?
Yes.
Okay, so let's go and make a motion. We need a motion on this.
Motion to deny.
And we need a second.
I second.
Second.
All right, okay. Let's take this to a vote. Buzz.
Yes.
Laura.
Yes.
Okay, I'll come back to John. Mark.
Yes.
Suzanne.
Yes.
Yes, Mike Kavak, yes.
We're not there yet. Maki.
Yes.
Richard.
Yes.
Mike Kavak.
Yes.
Sam. Sam is not with us. Sorry. Chuck.
Yes.
Karen.
Yes.
Barbara.
Yes.
Tony.
Yes.
And Leila, I'm a yes. And coming back to John Harris. John.
Yes. Yes.
Oh, fantastic. All right. So motion passes unanimously. Thank you. Moving on to our final application of the evening. This is 18 East 41st Street. This is an application for a facade restoration project. I think we have the applicant with us.
We are here, yes.
Fantastic. Thank you so much for your patience. And you can go ahead and share your screen, and we are ready for your presentation.
Okay, while our architects from MKDA put that up on the screen for you all, let me first introduce myself. My name is Ross Moskowitz. I'm an attorney at the law firm of Strzok & Strzok & Levan, and I represent the owners of 18 East 41st Street. Thank you very much. I hope everyone, I know you all have been here for a while, so we'll try to keep this right on point, but I hope everyone is doing okay and staying safe and healthy. Just wanted to give you a little background as John goes into this. This was first designated, as you may remember, this was designated during the process of Eastside Midtown zoning, and we worked very hard with the owners and their historical consultants to really understand this designation prior to it happening. And we work with LPC staff as well on that. So we've been very good stewards. Our owners have been very good stewards of the building, and in fact worked again with staff. So when it got designated in November 2016, we felt the report had our input. If you've read the report, you'll see there's been a lot of alterations, in particular at the storefront and at the street level, which is what we're going to be talking about. And I just wanted to make sure that the committee was aware of that. And as we go into the presentation, of course, we'll answer any questions. A lot of the work that we're looking to do here is on parts of the building, even known as an individual landmark, had been altered significantly over a period of time, and that the commission specifically calls out as altered is an altered facade. So with that as a backdrop, just wanted to sort of set the baseline for everyone. I'm going to turn over to John, and John and his colleague Peter will walk you through this. And of course, we'll stop at any point, either during the presentation or after, to answer any questions. And again, thank you for your patience. I know you've had a long agenda. John?
All right, Russ, thank you very much. I apologize, for some reason my camera's not working, but I understand you can see my screen. Is that correct?
Correct, John.
All right, thank you. Again, I apologize. I was here the whole meeting and now my camera's not working. So thank you again. My name is John Giuseppe. I'm an architect with MKDA, a design firm based here in New York City, with satellite offices in Stamford, Connecticut, Washington, and Miami. We are here this evening representing the ownership of 18 East 41st Street in pursuit of an approval for the proposed facade restoration, as Ross pointed out. Following our series of slides that will take you through, here on the left is a undated rendering that the folks at LPC were kind enough to share with us of what we believe to be the building in its original state. And to the right, you'll see some tax photos. They're kind of pieced together, but that's how they were registered and that's how we got them. What you see on the right of this photo is the east end of the building, showing what is today an entry into the retail space. Just want to point out on this as an item of note how the storefront is close to the facade of the building, and then the narrowness of the ground floor piers, the pilasters. Here is the opposite end of the building, the west side of the building, with the tenant entrance into the building. Again, the storefront forward to the facade of the building and the narrowness of the columns. And lastly, of the tax photos, where did my cursor go? There it is the building, although obscure in its whole presence. We were able to find some original blueprints. This goes back to the 1914 drawings by George and Ed Blum, the architects of the original building. This shows the tenant entry, where you see a series of 3 doors up at the facade of the building. Then in 1990, there was a restoration or reconfiguration, if you will, of the entry. This is as it exists today. The entry was pulled back into the building, away from the facade of the building. There's a pair of swing doors, outswinging swing doors, and a revolving door. And you can see that the columns were beefed up at this time. In plan view, the upper plan is the existing condition, and what we're showing dashed is what would be required in terms of removal to facilitate the changes we are here presenting in this application. The lower plan shows what the new configuration wants to be. We want to introduce in series 2 pairs of outswinging doors, 3 foot wide by the full height, and we'll get into a section in a moment. This is for the tenant entry. The space to the left is the retail space, would in plan remain unchanged. Here's a photograph of the existing condition as it exists, where we have the retail space to the left, Tommy's, and then the tenant entry to the right with the black awning, the wall sconces, and you can see how the entry, if I had a comment on the 1990 design, it's a cavernous entry into the building. And we have this dark 2nd story facade. So this is how it exists today. Keep losing my cursor. There it is. Here is a rendering of the proposed solution. Most notably, we wanted to bring 2 pairs of doors forward at the tenant entry, widen them so you get 2 pairs of 3 foot each leave doors with some minor side lights. We would brighten the finish of the 2nd story to this brass or bronze flavor. We would have the new storefront in that finish. We would refinish the existing storefront into the retail space in the same fashion. And you can see, it might be hard to see here, and we'll get to further in further studies, how we had to narrow down or slim down these columns in order to afford the width we needed for these full height doors. If I go back for a moment to the plan, you see how the existing doors, although they're 3 foot leaves, there's not enough room between the existing columns to facilitate that. In section view, we wanted to point out we're not proposing any changes to the profile of the building in terms of the upper story or the awning. The awning would want to just be made wider to pick up the new width of the door opening. Here is just a closer look at the existing tenant entry. We have, starting from the ground level, we have a stainless steel base. We have a reddish granite wainscot, and then we have the stuccoed faux columns going upward, and the storefront recess, the entry actually recessed into the building. And what we're showing as the proposed is to bring those doors forward. We would wish to make the entire facade, the metal parts, all the same brass bronze finish, including the stainless base at the bottom. We would replace the red granite with a more brown or bronzy stone. Again, this offers them protection in that in 18 East 41st, this is the freight entrance as well as the tenant entrance. We want to propose to make the awning wider so that we can pick up the width of the new doors, maintaining its height, maintaining its fit and finish in terms of what it's made. It's a stretched canvas with printed nomenclature for the address, and we were hoping to replace the old large wall sconces with these slimmer bronze LED fixtures. Some precedent photos from buildings in the area showing again the relationship between the awnings and the facade. You know, we found these buildings within a 3 or 4 block radius of 18 East 41st Street. This happens to be 15 East 40th. You can see it has a very similar awning type that we're looking to maintain on 18 East 41st. Here at 7 West 45th, again, the same type and vintage building that we're dealing with. And 56 West 45th Street. I was trying to be cognizant of your time. I know it's late. I took you through it pretty quickly, but we'd be happy to answer any questions that might come up, or if you feel I missed, I'll be happy to expand on that. Thank you.
Thank you. Let's jump into questions from members of the committee. Barbara, go ahead.
Is there an elevation, have I missed it, of the proposed facade?
This is a rendering of the proposed facade.
Yeah, so it's just the rendering.
Correct.
It's just, I'll save it for comments. Okay.
Thank you, Barbara. Any other questions? I'm kind of not totally sure of what we are looking at, so I'm going to ask the question because we rarely. I'm not going to preface my question. Are you proposing to slice, or can you actually speak to the material of these columns or pilasters that you're intervening on?
These columns as they exist are a stucco finish around an existing steel structure.
Okay. And so, but do I understand correctly that you're proposing to shave off a third of those?
That's correct. You see in here where we had to cut back these columns in order to get the width we need for those doors.
Okay, so I did understand that correctly. Okay. Moving on to Richard. Richard, go ahead.
Yeah, I lost a little bit of a track of, use the word restoration. So I'm wondering, but then what we saw was exist in terms of the changes existing to new, and it wasn't clear to me to what extent you are actually doing certain things that will restore what it was closer to the original the original building. Could you talk about that?
Certainly. Here's a tax photo. I'm not sure of the date, but you can see where the storefront, well, this happens to be the east side. If I go to the west side, where the doors were forward. So we were trying to restore the original architect's intent of having the doors at the facade and not recessed the way it is today.
Okay, and then I know you're shaving or narrowing some of the columns now. I think you said initially that the columns in the original photo were significantly narrower than they are today. Is that right?
That's correct. You can see in this photo how they don't align with the upper columns.
Yes, I see.
Same on the west side as well. You can see how narrow this is versus how wide the top one is. And in fact, if we look at this drawing, the center column that we see here didn't even exist originally. They had a clear span of these three doors.
Thank you. I have one other unrelated question. I see that the doors you want to put in swing out and extend beyond the property line. I'm not familiar with whether that's considered in general acceptable, because I'm envisioning someone walking into them when they're open. I don't know if that's a question for you or for the other folks on the committee to talk about.
Well, I can say that we are within code compliance, not extending greater than 1 foot 6 inches beyond the property line.
Got it. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Actually, can you put up the historic photograph, the one that LPC provided to you that has the entire facade?
This one?
Yeah. Okay. Thank you. If we can actually stay on this one, I'm going to take the next question, which is from Barbara. You still have your hand up. I don't know if it's a remnant from.
Yeah, I just want, it's sort of a follow-up, which is, was there any thought, you're lopping off the sides of these columns, which you said are just stucco, and they were enlarged at some point. Was there any thought about carrying that up further so it doesn't look so, truncated at that point? So it looks a little like an amputee. So it doesn't look so amputated.
And actually, we thought about that. We thought, and this is certainly subjective, we thought that by widening the canopy, it would take your eye away from that transition.
Okay.
So yes, it was thought about. Yes.
All right, moving on to Tony. Go ahead, Tony.
Thanks, Leila. And my first question, and Leila, maybe you were going to get to this as well. I noticed when reviewing this earlier today, the historic photo, has the applicant given any thought at all to a complete restoration of the retail and the second floor? Looking at the historical photo, it was very, very different. And these, I don't even know what to call them, maybe the neo-Gothic kind of look on the second floor windows, all of these changes are so extraordinarily different from the original design. And I see that you're trying to bring back some elements. Has there been any thought at all to restoring the entire 2 floors?
There has not.
Okay. One more point, Leila, if I could. And I may have missed this, forgive me, the lighting fixtures and the doors, are those solid bronze or are they painted aluminum?
They would be not solid bronze.
What are they?
They would be an aluminum storefront with a baked enamel finish.
Okay, thank you.
finish. And just to point out, my colleague reminded me, this is not a photograph. This is actually a rendering. So I don't know how true to reality it is or was.
Okay, thank you for pointing that out.
All right, thank you. Chuck, you have your hand up. Go ahead.
Thank you, Leila. And if this was provided earlier, I apologize. Do we know when the stucco columns were added to the storefront?
Restoration was from 1990.
And when was the building designated?
November 2016.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Any further questions, members of the committee? Maki, go ahead.
Just a brief question on the coloration of the windows above the awnings, please. I just was curious because it appeared to be a darker, maybe black earlier, but now the facade for that side as well as the adjacent side look more the oiled bronze color.
That is correct. That's part of the proposal, is to refinish that second story so it all becomes, you know, a homogeneous appearance.
And John, just as a reminder, that was in also some of the comments from the staff, right? So they were also encouraging. They were also encouraging that.
Okay, thank you. Any more questions, members of the committee? Okay, seeing none, I am going to open up the floor to members of the public. Do we have any questions or comments from members of the public? Charles Person, you are permitted to speak, and you can unmute yourself and go ahead with your comment or question. Charles, we're ready for your question or comment. All right, you are permitted to speak.
Sorry, hello.
Yes, go ahead.
I apologize. I used a talking computer. I had a little issue there. I apologize. So I had a question about the removal of the red granite. I think, and do forgive me if I got it wrong, but I think there was no mention of replacing it, replacing any red granite at all. I think it's removing and replacing it with some other material. Is red granite like a historical material that some buildings have in New York City? Is it very rarely used in, has it got any historical significance? And why is it being removed in the first place? And how much of the red granite is being removed? Is it all of it, or is there going to be some left over?
The idea is to remove all of it because we have to modify it for this new entry, and we're not going to be able to match it. It was not original. The historic photos show something of a much lighter color at the base. Sorry, that's not the right. You can see much lighter, but we want to maintain the color palette of what we're doing with the storefronts. So we thought something not as red, maybe more brown, but not as bright as it used to be.
Okay. So it has no historical significance then.
Not at 18 East 41st, no.
Okay.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions from members of the public? Okay, so seeing none, we will move to business session. All right, during business session, only members of the committee are allowed to discuss the matter. Are there any comments from members of the committee on this application? We need comments, members of the committee. Barbara, go ahead.
I'm troubled by the entrance, the tenant entrance. The fact that, and I sort of slipped and made the comment before, that, we're sort of these piers that are coming down are being kind of amputated, and then the canopy is the signage is somehow going to ameliorate that. I just feel it's somewhat, it feels awkward to me, and certainly not historic. It's and I have to say that the examples in the area of some kind of canopies really weren't really great examples as well. Not something that I would necessarily point to as something that we'd want to follow, but something architecturally to me feels very awkward, and I can appreciate that these aren't original. I personally would have liked to have seen an example where it was taken out all the way up. Or, as Tony suggested, maybe not a full restoration, but, something more in keeping with, something a little more full blown than basically this is, being done to add doors, which I think is, I can understand the need for putting in these double doors, these sound and light locks. That to me makes sense, but it's the execution I find a little awkward.
Yeah, thank you, Barbara. You actually stole the word away from me. Amputation is really what came to my mind as well. Other comments from members of the committee? We need to bring this to a wrap. Suzanne, go ahead.
Yeah, I guess I'll just try to say the same, but just honor what Barbara just said and maybe what you agree with, Leila. I just find that if they had embraced this for a more of a facade, it's a proposed facade restoration, but it feels very modern to me, or in contrast to the facade and honoring sort of the historic nature of the building. And I can't really speak to how you would resolve that, but I find like the lighting's very modern, and I understand they want to contemporize the building so that they can utilize it better. So I don't have a solve for it, but I just find that there's some loss here to some of the origin and contextual nature of the building that does make it historic. And I find this in contrast to that.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Suzanne. Any more comments on this? Peter, you have your hand up. Go ahead, Peter. Peter, you're muted.
Yeah, I would agree with Barbara and Suzanne that it does seem sort of arbitrary coming from left field, and the examples they're citing of things in the neighborhood aren't things to aspire to, that it's sort of bringing the level of historic continuity down rather than bringing it up. It just doesn't sort of make a lot of sense. And I think the presentation doesn't really fully explain where it's coming from and where it's going to. There's a rendering, but the lack of elevations, I think, is sort of a little bit troubling.
Yeah. Thank you, Peter. Okay, so what I'm hearing is, concerns about the alteration, a lack of respect for the proportions, an intervention that feels more like an amputation than really something that is thoughtful and harmonious, and the sense that it's not really a restoration, it's an intervention to the facade, but not in a restorative fashion. So it looks like we are leaning towards a denial. I just want to make sure that I'm reading the room correctly. I see some heads shaking yes. So if we are ready, we can actually go ahead with a motion on this application. If there are any comments to the opposite, now is your time to make them. Okay, so seeing no further comments, it means that we are ready for a motion to deny. So we need this motion to be made. I cannot make the motion.
I make a motion to deny.
And we need a second.
Second.
All right. Last vote of the evening. Buzz,
Yes.
Laura,
Yes.
John,
Yes.
Mark,
Yes.
Suzanne,
Yes.
Maki,
Yes.
Richard,
Yes.
Mike,
Yes.
Chuck,
Yes.
Karen,
Yes.
Barbara,
Yes.
Peter,
Yes.
Tony,
Yes.
and Leila. I'm a yes. All right. Motion carries. It is a unanimous vote. Thank you so much, everyone. Thank you for your patience and your hard work. Tomorrow is election day. Don't forget to vote. It's an important one. There are 4 or 5 questions on the ballot. Give it a look now so that you're not totally startled at the voting poll. And thank you so much.
Leila.
Yes.
Leila,
Yes.
Can I just comment? I wrote it in the chat, but this month, the full board looks like it's on Wednesday the 10th, not Thursday, Wednesday.
Oh, okay. Thank you for this reminder. We will make sure to send a reminder to all the members as well as the applicants so that they are duly notified. Thank you so much. And on that, the meeting is adjourned. Have a good evening, everyone.
Good night.
Bye-bye.